Hello, welcome to the latest edition of Global Perspectives. I'm Sanjay Pulipaka. Today we have with us Kallol Bhattacherjee, who's a senior assistant editor at The Hindu. And he's also author of numerous well-known books, such as The Nehru's First Recruits, published by HarperCollins in 2024, and then A Singular Spy, published by Bloomsbury in 2024, and also The Great Game in Afghanistan, which was published in 2017 by, again, HarperCollins. Welcome, Kallol, onto the
Thank you so much.
Global Perspectives program.
Thank
A
you.
lot of things have been happening in India's eastern neighborhood. For instance, Myanmar is going through a troubled, painful transition. Bangladesh is also going through a lot of troubled transition. Uh, you have been keeping track of these events, writing about them extensively, and also speaking about them. If you look at the past 1 year or 1.5 years, what was the most surprising event or set of events that you have noticed in Bangladesh? And why was it surprising?
Well, thank you so much, Sanjay, and it's an honor and a privilege to be in conversation with you. Um, Bangladesh, of course, is not stranger to political turmoil, and it has a particular trajectory in which political turmoil has a tendency to break out in Bangladesh after a certain period of pause. If we look back the last 50 or 55 years in the history of the region, or even go back in time to 1947. But what was most dramatic this time was actually the fact that Sheikh Hasina, who was known as the leader of the Awam, she was the leader of Awami League. Um, she was known as a street fighter, and she had a reputation for empathy and etc. Uh, the fall of her government was understandable. Governments fall in Bangladesh, but then the way she fled the country, I think
Mm,
that was dramatic because had it displayed that she had little understanding about the timing of her own politics because perhaps
mm,
she had uh, in a way got her senses had perhaps got blunted because she didn't understand when to really retire from the trajectory that she was in. She was continuously at the helms of affairs for nearly 15 years. And I think, it was really too much for her. And by the time she started talking about children of Razakar, that is, all the protesters who are on the streets of Dhaka and other cities were actually children of traitors, that was, I think, the turning point. And she should have resigned before that. And yet she went on with the crackdown after that. And that really paved the way for sort of a point of no return. And Hasina had a reputation. She was people's leader. If you look at the two leaders that Bangladesh has witnessed in the last half century, that is Khaleda Zia and Sheikh Hasina. Hasina was the street fighter. She
mm,
was the person who used to hit the streets first. And whether I've been talking about it because she displayed that element of empathy in her character repeatedly, be it in 1981 when General Ziaur Rahman was assassinated in Chittagong, when she left her home in the middle of the night and she wanted to reach Chittagong to see what was happening to General Ziaur Rahman, or in 1991 when the cyclone hit, even before the relief services had reached the southern part of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina had reached there and she was standing in the middle of this devastation and water and all sorts of mud, and she was there. So for this sort of a leader to have a fall so complete in which she had no option but to leave her own country and her own followers, who actually wanted her to stay on and fight, because I think that also busted a lot of myth about the leadership that
uh,
she represented. She represented a legacy of Sheikh Mujib and Tajuddin Ahmed and Nazrul Islam and many others of her party. And the whole tradition of Bangladesh was shaped by Awami League. If I'm not, I'm trying to simplify it a little bit. But then Awami League was the party of liberation in 1971, and that's undisputed fact. And today, Awami League is nowhere because of the simple fact that it was not just her government was uprooted, but also she had to flee the scene. So I think that when she fled the scene, that was, I think, unforgettable, because it proved that it was basically not just a regime change, but perhaps even it's a sort of a, threat to the state itself. And it was a complete washout. So yeah, I think that was the most dramatic thing, in terms of visuals and the political significance of that particular, escape. Yeah, I think that was the most important, yeah, surprising thing.
Yeah, while Sheikh Hasina left the country, the reins of the government was later taken over quickly by Muhammad Yunus as the chief advisor of the interim government. He's known for his economic interventions. How do you evaluate his government in the last, or his governance in the last 1 year or more? Are there any singular economic policies that he has introduced, or was his governance consumed by responding to or managing to the troubled transition that is taking place in Bangladesh?
Well, Professor Yunus delivered a speech, I think, on the 7th of June. It was the Eid speech that he delivered, and it was in that speech that he talked about his economic vision, and also some of the initiatives that he had taken in the last, months that he was in charge. And it was quite clear that he had a vision for Bangladesh to emerge as some sort of a, connector, or some sort of a dynamic platform for South Asia, where it would be meant for, it would be open for investments, and it would be free of corruption. It would have an open market system. And he kept on talking throughout that speech that the previous mega projects that Bangladesh had witnessed were riddled with corruption, and that he was turning those mega projects into inclusive projects of the future. So his idea was that Bangladesh would continue to have massive investment, and Bangladesh would have mega projects in the coming years. And he also talked about turning that country's maritime sector into the lifeline of the country, because Bangladesh has natural ports like in Chittagong, and then the upcoming ports like Matabari and others
Mm,
that are under construction. And he talked about his vision that if Chittagong could be handled in a more effective way, then just one port, one major port, could be the
mm,
reason for Bangladesh's progress. So he talks about attracting more investment, and he believes that Bangladesh has become more attractive, and that is also a kind of an opinion among certain sections of the West, that sees Bangladesh as more attractive destination for investments. But then, as you said, that has he been caught up with the entire, the overall issue of reform, etc., that have been part of his main plank? Surprisingly, economic development or economic reform was not really the three of the main things that Professor Yunus has been talking about. Professor Yunus's agenda has been shaped by number one, justice. That is justice for the killings that took place in July and first week of August 2024. And then he talked about administrative reform. And finally, he talks about election. That is, if the reform and the justice is delivered, then they would proceed towards election. Now, these are the three issues that he kept in front of his supporters. But then economic development or economic vision that he has was not really at the forefront when he took charge. So the issue is that without solid law and order, neither election nor economic development can take place. And the reason that Bangladesh has witnessed sort of an economic boom in the past, say till 2024, in the 15 years prior to 2024, was because there was an authoritarian system that was ensuring the country would
mm.
stay on track, and the country would ensure that some of the goods of this boom would go down to the weaker sections of the society. But that has not been the case ever since he came to power, in the sense that the interim government came to power, because what we are witnessing is basically daily instability. Though in terms of attractiveness of the market, it is very much in front of everyone, and that Bangladesh remains an open market. But then the lack of law and order and the lack of stability in the country is a matter of concern, and I think that is a handicap for the country's economy as well. So I think his vision, I agree that if Bangladesh can take care of its maritime sector, if it can revive the garment sector once again, which has been hit because of the decline in orders and other factors, including the difficulties in importing of raw materials. Those sectors have been hit, but to ensure the revival of these sectors, he needs to revive and revitalize the law and order first of all, and I think that will happen only once we have a stable government in place.
You just referred that there is a daily instability that is plaguing Bangladesh politics and its economy. One of the important pillars in Bangladesh politics has been military. There have been moments when many people speculated perhaps now military will step in, but that has not materialized. Do you think that the military will confine itself to barracks? And or a larger question that we need to ask is, what do you think would be the role of military in Bangladesh politics moving forward?
Well, Bangladesh military actually has been out of the barracks for quite some time. They have taken charge of the magisterial issues in the country starting with September 2024. But having said that, they are not really hands-on in the sense that they are not directly in charge of the affairs of the state. They want the law and order authorities to carry out their duties on a daily basis. But the fact is that if you look at the situation on the streets in Bangladesh, you will often find that there is a policeman standing in front without his tools, like without a stick, without a weapon, without even a handgun with him. And behind the police, there will be a military person, or maybe in some distance from the police, there will be a military person. So the military person is armed. But the fact is, Bangladesh military is not so large that it can take care of the Bangladesh police, because Bangladesh police is really a humongous organization, which can take care of the Bangladesh's law and order situation. But then the Bangladesh police is not functioning, and as a result, there is a daily tendency to basically see the law and order situation break down almost on a daily basis. So what we are witnessing is that the military has given itself the magisterial powers all over the country, and not just all over the country, even in the air. That is the sky, the aviation. So anything happens, whether in the skies of Bangladesh or on the waters of Bangladesh or on the territory of Bangladesh, is entirely being handled by the Bangladesh military. But then it is not directly it is not in a position to directly govern the affairs of the state. It has not done that so far, because I think General Wakiluzzaman felt that it was the best thing to do, because there was a popular uprising, and there was this government created by the protesters, which is led by Professor Yunus. So it is more like a council of elders or council of eminent citizens who are more or less in charge, and people are more or less agreeing with that sort of a setup. So military sort of stayed away from taking charge directly. But now is the big thing that the election is coming up. And if the Bangladesh authorities can hold the election in the correct way, then perhaps the military will go back to the barracks. And General Wakiluzzaman has been talking about sending his boys back to the barracks, because there is a daily attrition that takes place when the military is out, because
Mm.
there will be somebody falling sick or someone getting into a fight, and there are all these incidents happens when the military is out on the field. And that is what is happening also to Bangladesh military, which is known for basically peacekeeping,
Uh-huh.
more like more abroad, peacekeeping abroad. So he wants his military to get back to doing what it was doing before. But so far, he has been stuck with the law and order situation, because Bangladesh police and Bangladesh paramilitary are not fully in control of the situation. So
Uh-huh.
they have to be out on the field for at least 3 to 4 months, or at least till the next government is formed and the law and order authorities get back in shape.
One of the other issues that you mentioned just now is justice for killings. What do you think about the death penalty given to Sheikh Hasina? What do you think of the process? Do you think it will bring about a closure to the victims of the violence? Or do you think it will open up new grievances What is your opinion on that?
Well, we have to really go back in time to July 2024 and look at the way the killings were taking place. There is, of course, dispute from the side of Army League because they allege that some of the killings were committed by the opponents, that is, by Jamaat Islami and others. They wanted to defame the government forces for carrying out extrajudicial killings, etc. But then there's the number of killings in those days. For example, when the internet, will very well remember,
Mm,
internet was shut down repeatedly in the second fortnight of July. And there were killings like, 90 deaths a day and 100 deaths a day happening on 18th, 19th, and 21st July of 2024. So these require very serious investigation. Number one. I'm not going to get into whether the death sentence was legit or not, because I think that is to be evaluated by a thorough judicial, through a proper legal process. What appears to me at the moment is that this particular legal process, which was, of course, carried out through the International Crimes Tribunal, was done in a hurry, and the whole internal political process of Bangladesh casts a greater shadow on that particular uh, process of investigation and the justice that was carried out by International Crimes Tribunal, because the number of deaths that we are talking about is basically in the range of 1400 to 1600s that the opposition is accusing the government forces of carrying out. After the fall of Sheikh Hasina government, there were an unknown number of deaths of policemen that took place. And these deaths also need to be accounted for because the interim government said there were around 44 or 48 policemen who were killed. But then the government sources who are sympathetic to the police also say that these deaths were also in hundreds of policemen who were lynched by mobs and who were killed in that revenge attack which took place after Sheikh Hasina left. So I think we really have to look for a more thorough investigation, and only then we would know whether this particular judgment given to Sheikh Hasina was the right judgment that one would expect, and one would say that is logical as far as the killings are concerned. I mean, in India, of course, we talk a great deal about the fall of the government of Sheikh Hasina. But then inside Bangladesh, there is a lot of talk about justice for these deaths because, these are their relatives, these are their children who have been shot to death. So there is also public clamor, public demand for justice, and that also has to be taken into account. That whether we like a death sentence or criticize a death sentence is one matter, but then on the ground there is a strong, urging that these deaths need to be met with justice because
mm,
these are precious human lives, and most of them are very, very young people. So the United
mm.
Nations investigation came out with a report, and it said around more than 1,400 people were shot dead. So you compare it with, in fact, these days I've been comparing these two because Nepal also had an uprising, but
Mm.
Nepal's uprising had almost like 40 to 50 deaths with hundreds of injured. But then in case of Bangladesh, there were reportedly 12,000 injuries. So yeah, so you can look at it. It's almost like a very savage, clash. So it is not just a very intense fight that took place during those 2 weeks of confrontation, and mostly in the urban centers of Bangladesh. So I think we have to also, because it's part of the public demand, and their grievance has to be understood, that why do people feel so strongly, because such a large number of people have died.
Indeed, very tragic. While we often discuss about Sheikh Hasina, the other important principal player for quite some time has been Begum Khalida Zia. She passed away recently. How do you evaluate her politics, her legacy?
Well, Khaleda Zia, in fact, had a longer political trajectory than Sheikh Hasina because
Mm,
Sheikh Hasina, of course, left Bangladesh in the late 1970s, from mid 70s to late 1970s till 1981. In fact, on 13th of
yeah.
May 1981, that she returned to Dhaka. But Khaleda Zia had already, debuted in politics first as the housewife of Ziaur Rahman, and after Ziaur Rahman's assassination, she joined active politics. But by that time, she was already well known as the spouse of the president. So in that sense, I count her political presence, at least in the platform of Bangladesh, nation building, as of a little longer than what Sheikh Hasina had been known for. But I would look at not just the entire political duration of Khaleda Zia, but two parts of her politics that really acquires greater relevance because of the situation that Bangladesh is in right now. Number one is, of course, her struggle in the late 1980s when she was giving leadership to the anti-Ershad movement, and number two, when she came out of this political, rather this, she was imprisoned during Hasina's tenure. So when she came out of prison, and the way she spoke about herself and her politics without any bitterness. I mean, Sheikh Hasina
mm,
left Bangladesh on 5th of August, and it was very easy for Khaleda Zia to come out, and she was freed on the same day, same afternoon. She was freed from detention. And the first thing she said was that she has no bitterness for towards anybody. And there was media when she came out, and they asked her this question: that do you feel angry? Don't you feel angry? And she said, no, I have no bitterness towards anybody. Because I think it was not that she was a kind-hearted person. I mean, she was actually politically extremely astute, and she saw that her allies who war with her in 2001 to 2006 period, that is Jamaat-e-Islami, would now emerge as her rivals because her long-term and her familiar rival, that is Hasina, had fled the country. So she, with her wisdom, she understood that now I have to sound reconciliatory because I will have old friends as my rivals. So they need to somehow they need to relax and they need to calm down because they're not going to be overwhelmed by my leadership because she was a great leader of the people. She could mobilize the people because she was a kind of a mother figure. In comparison, Sheikh Hasina was never really perceived as a mother figure, though she also projected her mother as the real mother of Bangladesh, that Fazilatul Nisa, which is Sheikh Mujib's wife. Sheikh Hasina always talked about her mother as the mother of Bangladesh. But then for BNP, Khaleda Zia was projected as the mother figure for the country.
mm,
So
mm,
Khaleda always had this healing sort of a personality that she carried. And I think these two aspects, that is, number one, in how she conducted herself during 89 to 90, during the anti-Ershad period as a Democrat, which was really the finest period of both Sheikh Hasina as well as Khaleda Zia, because they both came together. And surprisingly, even Jamaat-e-Islami supported them because there was such a popular urging for greater accountability and democracy in the country. So I think these two phases of Khaleda Zia's politics are of significance because these two indicate that even Professor Yunus doesn't have that sort of healing
mm,
touch that Khaleda Zia displayed last August when she says that she had no bitterness. I mean, Professor Yunus has been rather bitter, though he's in
mm,
charge of the government, and he often talks about fascism, Fasiwadis, and etc. But Khaleda Zia never talked about her rivals in that term. I mean, she talked about fighting against tyranny, fighting against oppression, military rule, etc. So I think that touch of reconciliation and the touch of taking everyone along is something that Khalida's legacy would be remembered for now in this present circumstances.
I think now Tariq Rahman will take over the reins of, has taken over the reins of BNP for the next election. But before we move on to that, quick thoughts on what are the politics and the principles of the National Consensus Commission that was constituted and the July Charter that came out. What do you think will be its impact on the forthcoming elections?
Well, the July Charter was basically an outcome, as you mentioned, of the National Consensus Commission. And the National Consensus Commission is part of these two commissions that led the anti-Hasina movement. One was the
Mm,
Anti-Discrimination Commission, the other was the National Citizens Commission. So
mm,
these two commissions were used in a sense to mobilize the protesters against
mm,
the oppressive government of Hasina in July, August 2024. And then they created the Consensus Commission. But then we have to remember that the election is not just the election of the ruling party or the ones who are going to govern. the day of election is also going to be the day of the referendum on the July
Mm.
Charter. And the
Yeah.
July Charter, yeah, and the July Charter is essentially a charter or a set of goals and principles that will reshape the state of Bangladesh. And here we have some of the most significant things. For example, even at the beginning, Bangladesh is known for its, language nationalism, because that is the root of the origin of Bangladesh after the formation of Pakistan, because Pakistan was formed, and then Muhammad Ali Jinnah came to Dhaka and said that everybody should start speaking Urdu, and with that Urdu started the problem that Bangladesh should speak its own language, that's Bangla. But in this particular the July Charter, you will see that it starts with recognizing not just Bangla, but also all other languages that are spoken inside Bangladesh as sort of recognized languages. So that is some sort of a broadening of the idea of Bangladesh itself. That it will be, in terms of language and language nationalism, it will be more broad based. And then it proceeds to multiple other sectors of the state, starting with accountability and transparency in judicial appointments, bureaucratic appointments, and then the whole political setup, where Bangladesh's politics remains particularly attractive for political parties because it is a prime ministerial, or in the sense, Westminster kind of a system. But this July Charter is basically bringing in changes in the power of the prime minister. So, for example, the prime minister of Bangladesh in future, if the July Charter is adopted through the referendum on 12th of February, will not be able to contest more than two elections. That is,
Mm.
or maybe the person will be able to contest more than two elections, but he will not be able to become prime minister for more than two terms. So these are the things that are coming, and which will also take away some power from the position of the prime minister. And then it is creating a more, in a way, more authoritative institution of the president. So the
Mm.
president will have authority now, in the sense that today the current president of Bangladesh is just titular. It's a titular position, but then the future future president of Bangladesh will have authority to appoint the human rights commissioner, authority to appoint the right to information commissioner, the information commissioner. These sort of important positions will be these officials will be chosen by the president of Bangladesh in future. So there is some sort of a parity, or perhaps some sort of balance that will be struck between the position of the prime minister, who will be an elected leader of the country, and the president, who will be chosen by the parliament and others. And the procedure of impeachment of the president will also be similarly a little bit modified. So there are many such structural changes that are coming in that will so this is again a very interesting experiment that Bangladesh is going into. That on the one hand, it will have a parliamentary election. On the other hand, it will also have a referendum
Yes.
which will take up some of the power of the parliamentary system itself and turn it into some sort of a quasi presidential system. So, as we see in case of, say, again, to come back to Nepal, which has both the parliamentary system as well as the quote unquote Politburo system. They don't call it Politburo, but they call it the Central Committee and the Standing Committee system of Maoist parties, because the Maoist parties are more or less in charge in Nepal before this particular interim government came in power in Nepal. So similarly, Nepal is always caught between this balance, how to balance between the Maoist impulses and Maoist party rules and the parliamentary system, which also has to be handled. So I think Bangladesh is going to enter some sort of a phase where, because of their recent bitter experience with the parliamentary system, they are trying to balance it in such a way so that this sort of situation is never faced by the country in future. But this is again to give it in a very brief capsule that the July Charter will again come for its ultimate test on the 12th of February, when people will have to agree to everything that the July Charter is offering. Until that time, we'll have to see whether people really agree to every formulation that is coming up in the July Charter.
One supplementary question here. The system is parliamentary but quasi-presidential. Do you foresee possibility of Muhammad Yunus trying to position himself as president after the elections?
Yes, yes, that is what the rumor is in the market because
Mm,
the you must have seen that there was a Reuters report that came out after the current president gave an interview to the Reuters, and he said that
mm,
he has been treated very badly, and he feels left alone, and he said that he perhaps is considering stepping down immediately after the election. So he can't step down before the election, but
mm,
he can step down immediately after the election once the government is formed. Because once, say, in a purely speculative manner, if the BNP comes to power or with a single with a single largest party or as a single largest party or by winning a simple majority, BNP will have the authority to set the house in order to its own preference. So it will have the choice of getting a
mm,
president of its own, or that sort of an adjustment will have to be made. So at that time, I think if you look at the July Charter, it hints at somebody who is politically aware of the situation that is currently Bangladesh in. Someone like that would throw his hat in the ring. And I have a feeling that Professor Yunus is not done yet because he is respected as part of, as the person who has led the interim government. And it's quite possible that he might contest, or he might be persuaded to contest the next presidential election or
mm,
presidential contest, and continue as the next president of Bangladesh. So again, I mean, his office, I mean, his press advisor and others, they continue to deny that he will continue, he will linger on. But
mm,
my guess is that in the given circumstances, either Professor Yunus or the Chief Justice, who has just retired, he's
mhm.
also a highly competent person. I think either of the two
Okay.
would be the next president of Bangladesh.
Okay. We have been talking about institutions in terms of parliamentary, presidential. You are hinting at the possibility of BNP may coming to power. Uh, Tariq Rahman is now back in the country. He has received a fantastic welcome at the airport, and the roadshow was attended by thousands, if not lakhs, of people. And the subsequent public meeting was also a grand success. A few questions here. Why was he in exile for 17 years? And he's now back. Yes, the initial public reception was good, but do you think he really has touch with the grassroots of Bangladesh? And do you think this positive reception he got at the on his arrival will continue till the elections?
Well, Tariq Rahman was basically the architect of Bangladesh Nationalist Party's victory in 2001.
Mhm,
And he partnered his mother in 2001 to 2006 as the brain of the government, and he was highly influential. But he was not a member of the parliament. During that time, he became the joint secretary, the first joint secretary of the party, which was an important position that was given to him by his mother. Because he had, in a way, engineered that election victory. And it was a massive verdict that she had. And then Khaleda Zia, partnered with Jamaat Islami, and a lot of law and order issues
mm,
happened. And the international situation was also very different because we had the 9/11 happening at that time. And the whole issue of sensitivity towards terror was a matter which acquired a particular sense of urgency during that time, and which did not get that sort of a response from the BNP in 2005, 2001 to 6. Though BNP continues to insist that they actually took a lot of actions, etc. But these are for day-to-day analysis. What happens here is that Tariq Rahman, after the 2006, when the political instability started in October, November 2006, and finally when the 111 government was formed in January 2007, there was a lot of contest for power as it happens in Bangladesh, and the BNP was accused of corruption. And
mm,
Tariq Rahman was taken into custody. He was quote unquote tortured. And there was also very severe, physical injuries that he had to endure during that time. And in that set of circumstances, he gave an undertaking to the government of that day. That is, that he will stay away from politics of Bangladesh. And it is on that undertaking that he was allowed to leave Bangladesh. So the reason that he it's basically it's kind of black and white statement here
Mm,
that the reason that he stayed away from Bangladeshi politics for a certain period of time was because of this undertaking that he had given, not just to a interim government, but to an interim government that is backed by the Bangladesh military. And Bangladesh military is not going anywhere. So if anybody gives an undertaking to the Bangladesh military, then that is an undertaking given to the Bangladesh's establishment, and that's a serious matter. So what happened here is that as long as Sheikh Hasina was contesting, or rather, she was ruling from 2009 to 2014, that undertaking was sacrosanct. But once the 2014 election appeared to head in a direction where the opposition, that is BNP, refused to participate, that is the moment when Tariq Rahman's undertaking basically fell apart, because the BNP's
mm,
position from that election onwards was that since we have boycotted all the three elections down to 2024 January, so therefore that undertaking to the military is no longer valid because we didn't participate to begin with. So
mm,
where is the question of my staying away from politics or getting involved with politics? So Tariq Rahman's position was therefore revised in that backdrop of boycott of the election. And since the election was boycotted, and his mother made it very very clear that since it's a boycott by the party, so neither Tariq nor she herself would be at the forefront of the political activities. So that reason that he stayed away for the first 5 years was because of the undertaking given to the
mm,
military, and for the next three elections that the BNP stayed away was because there was a consensus within the party that there is no point contesting election because Army League is going to rig the elections, and that was the position that they took, and therefore he stayed away subsequently because of an internal political understanding. And
and
what
how
you
do you?
mentioned about, yeah, also that the rally that he has, the welcome rally that we all saw on our TV screens in Dhaka, I mean, it's absolutely stupendous because we haven't seen such a huge rally for a leader who stays away from his or her country. I mean, the only comparable example that comes to my mind is when Benazir Bhutto returned to Pakistan
Mm,
in 1986 April, and reportedly, there was a consideration that Benazir, whether she should come to Karachi because she belongs to Karachi, or should she
mm,
return to Lahore. And there was a feeling within the Pakistan People's Party that Benazir, if she returns to Lahore, perhaps the number of people would the turnout would be smaller because she's not a Punjabi.
mm,
But then there were 3 million people who came to welcome her in Lahore airport, and
mm,
she wrote in her autobiography, The Daughter of the East, that how she saw those millions of people from her aircraft in the sky, that they were literally covering the whole the surface of Pakistan, Lahore. So I think this is what I think even Tariq Rahman must have felt, that the power of a political party, especially a party which is known as an establishment party, just like yeah, Awami League was till its leader fled. This sort of a political party has a particular advantage because they are automatically connected to the people, and people miss its leaders, when they are not seen on the ground. But then, having said that, what happened immediately after that welcome was also interesting, because we have to remember what's happening in the dynamic political field of Bangladesh. Next day after Tariq Rahman's return, Jamaat-e-Islami went ahead and snagged this new political party called National Citizen Party.
mm,
And more or less, the party fell apart because Jamaat-e-Islami grabbed that party and made it into an alliance partner for the next election. So Jamaat scored a tactical victory vis-a-vis BNP. So we also have to remember that yes, Tariq Rahman has received a great deal of support and a very warm welcome, but the coming days are no less challenging because every day is a challenge. So I think considering that, they have planned this period of mourning for Khaleda Zia, in which people are interacting with the party, they are meeting party's leadership, and people are coming to Khaleda Zia's grave in Dhaka from different parts of the country to place flowers and show their respect. And then all over the country, in every district and division, BNP is conducting these meetings in remembrance of Khaleda Zia. So this campaign will have to be, in a way, kept on if they have to really, take advantage of that emotional, that sympathy factor.
You just mentioned that the other important player, Jamaat, there were moments when it contested in alliance with BNP during the previous elections, whenever they contested it. But its election performance was not spectacular. Do you think now, with the tactics that you are talking about, the performance of Jamaat may be very different this time around?
Yes, because that is what the surveys are telling us. Because multiple surveys have indicated that Jamaat is the second player in the
Mm,
field,
mm,
and they will do very well, considering that what happens in Bangladesh is that when a change takes place, people actually vote for the change makers.
mm,
When the change took place in 1990, people voted for BNP because Khaleda Zia was perceived as the leader who brought in that fall
right.
of tyranny and fall of the dictatorship. So, in
Mm,
that same way, this time, BNP, that is in 2024 election, BNP was not in the fray. But after the election, when the mobilization had to take place for fighting Sheikh Hasina, the leadership came from the students' wing of Jamaat-e-Islami, that is Shibir. So that gives you a hint about the direction that the people's sentiment would be in. Because in 2001 to 2006, when BNP took Jamaat as a partner, Jamaat was a junior partner. I think they had some 3 to 4 ministers with them, and one of those ministers were later on hanged because of the International Crimes Tribunal that Sheikh Hasina had conducted during 2010 to 2014 and 16. But the fact is that this time around, the political change was brought in visibly. And everybody says this on the ground that without Jamaat, this kind of political change would not have been possible. So the muscle power and the sacrifice that a lot of people happily did is because they were associated with Jamaat. And I think that is a factor that people will also take into consideration. Obviously, Jamaat in a leading role will set the alarm bells ringing in many quarters of stakeholders of Bangladesh. But this is a new uncharted terrain that Bangladesh is in. And Jamaat's political muscle is for everyone to see, including its former ally BNP, which wants to obviously become the sole the master of Bangladesh. But then I think the surveys are saying that or indicating that Jamaat is going to do quite well if they can keep the momentum going till 12th of February, because Jamaat also has many disruptive elements, many extremist elements. Some of them make many irrational demands, and they have a tendency to launch many protests, sometimes disjointed from the central leadership. So we have to see whether this particular uprising-prone party will be able to sort of orient itself as a party of governance in the short time that is in the next 30 to 35 days.
In addition to Jamaat, students have been also at the forefront, and in the recent past, some of them have launched this National Citizens Party, and Jamaat and NCP have tied up together. How is this alliance being perceived, and do you think Jamaat will benefit more than NCP?
Well, Jamaat made, it's my understanding, of course, that it made a mistake because Jamaat
Mm,
started talking about its agenda. And
mm,
one of the things that Jamaat mentioned was that the women of Bangladesh should work only for 5 hours a day.
mm,
Because Bangladesh's garment sector basically thrives because of the participation of Bangladesh's women. And not just the garment sector, I mean, look at many other sectors, be it farms and fishing. Women participate in the activities of multiple sectors of Bangladesh's economy. And to tell the women of Bangladesh that you can't work for more than 5 hours is slightly audacious, because it did not make Jamaat-e-Islami popular, and we saw the reflection of this statement, when multiple female leaders in the National Citizen Party,
mm,
either either immediately quit or
Right.
announced that they would contest election independently. Now, one of these leaders is this lady called Tasneem Zara. Now,
Mm.
she's a doctor and she used to practice in London. She
Right.
returned and she is now contesting on her own. And she has actually raised a lot of money from the public for her independent bid for the parliament, for a parliament seat in Dhaka. Now, these are just indications that if Jamaat comes up with such ideas that women should not work and women should dress up in a certain way, then these things will scare people away. But despite that, they have managed to strike an alliance with NCP because NCP as such is in at its core, it's basically a collection of some 20, 25 young men and a few young women, and they don't have the kind of political network that someone as seasoned as, say, Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir would bring for BNP, who is almost 80 years old and he knows everybody in Bangladesh's politics and call up anybody in Bangladesh's political terrain and have a talk about an alliance. So these boys, they basically lost direction and they were, to my understanding, they had little option but to come to Jamaat because many of them were also raised in the student units of Jamaat's Shibir. So in that way, they basically went back to where they started. So the NCP has gone into an election alliance, but it's also being said that NCP is a vanishing force. It is a diminishing force. But interestingly, NCP also is a sort of a school. It's kind of a learning center for many aspiring politicians. And I mentioned Tasneem Zara because this bright
Mm.
young lady, uh, she has a bright future because the amount of money that she has raised just by crowdfunding is amazing. And there are also many other young women who are also part of the NCP and are thinking what to do next. So the party has been more or less divided, with the majority of the party joining Jamaat, but a significant part of the party has actually stayed back into the NCP fold, minus alliance with Jamaat. So I think
Mm.
it is an experiment of sorts. It is not really like Aam Aadmi Party of India or anything comparable, but it has some sort of an appeal for the people, for the young people who
Right.
participated and who suffered in the crackdown of July August 2024.
The rise of Jamaat, in a way, is also mirroring the rise of religious fundamentalism in the country. What do you think is the secular space today in Bangladesh? How is it looking like? Is there a party or parties that are trying to strengthen the secular space in Bangladesh? What is your assessment?
Well, the secular space in Bangladesh's society and Bangladesh's within the people of Bangladesh will always be there. But whether the state of Bangladesh would have that space in future, especially after it has undergone the traumatic period of 2024 to 25, is something that we have to see. Because if a particular a political party with a specific religious agenda or a specific theological agenda comes to power, then that can impact Bangladesh's state's secular orientation. Of course, I'm sure you also observe it quite often that, every time the fundamentalists give a push, there is equal amount of counter push that comes from the seculars in Bangladesh. And,
Mm.
in Bangladesh, secular fundamentalists are quite fundamentalists. They are not like, they're not like the polite secularists that we see in India. Because, they have a history of fighting for their variety of secularism. And you saw that when these two institutions, which are actually synonymous with Bangladesh's secularism, that is Chayanot and Udichi, these two were attacked along with these two prominent newspaper offices that were burnt down. What we saw was that day after the attack, hundreds of singers and performers who come to these two institutions to sing and dance, they actually were singing and dancing on the streets of Dhaka. Uh, the kind of a polite but a loud protest to the, and also the kind of a message to the fundamentalists that Bangladesh cannot be steered in one direction or the other, because there is a great deal of possibility that the fundamentalists, or even, for example, I would say Jamaat, can commit a terrible mistake if they think that the anti-Hasina movement was basically a license to turn Bangladesh into an authoritarian Islamist state. That was not the idea, because the verdict of the people in the election is one thing, but the verdict of the people who came out and got shot to protest against a particular form of oppression was also very clear that they were not giving permission to turn their country into an Islamist theocracy. So I think Jamaat will make a mistake if it takes away that secular space and converts Bangladesh into an Islamist theocratic state. I think that is not going to be liked by the people of Bangladesh, because there is a lot of talk that there will be one more uprising if Bangladesh moves in that direction, because they don't want the revolution to be hijacked in any way or the other. They also don't want to be in this eternal mood of uprising. They don't want to burn down buildings, and they don't want to destroy this and destroy that. They want to go on with their lives. And I think that is possible only if a kind of a status quoist power comes to Dhaka and more or less reconciles all sections of people, and more or less restarts the law and order machinery so that the economic machine can again hum back to life.
Fairly large number of people from Bangladesh also live abroad. A huge diaspora is there. They contribute significantly to the economy in terms of remittances.
Yeah.
I presume they started this postal vote dimension as well. So, what do you think will be their impact on politics? One, in terms of voting. Second, in terms of the financial flows that they provide. And third, more importantly, since we are discussing about the possibilities of Bangladesh turning into an Islamic theocracy or not, where do these diaspora, how do they see the Bangladesh back home?
Well, the reason that prompted the postal ballots was because it is a kind of a note of gratitude for the people who send remittances home. And
Mm,
Bangladesh is one of the largest manpower exporters from South Asia, and I think it's second only to India when it
mm,
comes to the Gulf region. Be it Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, it's second to India. So I think in that sense, it's a recognition of the contribution of the remittance suppliers of Bangladesh, the remittance warriors, as Muhammad Yunus keeps on referring to them. That apart, the remittance warriors were also the first anti-Hasina regiment that protested, because before the crackdown started, there was this massive online campaign among the non-resident Bangladeshis to stop sending remittances home. So there was this in the month of June 2024, and in the month of July, when the crackdown actually began, there was this entire online campaign that stopped sending money to Hasina, because Hasina is taking our money, and we this money is not reaching our families. So this was a kind of, therefore, kind of recognition of the role that they played in ensuring this political transition happens back home, and that was the primary factor. But then there is also a politics, because many of these people live away from home, and they have naturally, slightly, in terms of being based in the Gulf, they have a slightly religious and puritanical perspective to the way of life of Bangladesh. But that doesn't mean that they are politically sagacious. So we do not know what sort of political wisdom they represent, because there is no such organization, or there is no association as such that represents them at the political field. So at the end of the day, it is understandable that bulk of the votes, that is more than 1 million votes that have been registered as of now, they will go for either the Jamaat-e Islami or the BNP. and the students, of course, because many of these are, these people are young. They are part of the young workforce of Bangladesh. So these young people would be voting for Bangladesh, the National Citizens Party. So it's quite possible that not these votes will be essentially non-BNP votes. This is my understanding. But having said that, BNP is also very active in the non-resident Bangladeshi communities, especially in Europe, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, and of course also in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia has one of the largest chunks of the non-resident Bangladeshis, and the BNP has units of its supporters in the non-resident Bangladeshi communities, and I think they will try to mobilize some of the votes and steer them towards BNP. But my assessment is that given the popularity of the uprising among the non-resident Bangladeshi working class population, a bulk of it will go to Jamaat and the Students' Party, that is National Citizen Party.
One of the things that we are often noticing when we discuss about Bangladesh is that we are focusing a lot on religion, I mean, contemporary discussion, and seeing Bangladesh through the prism of religion, fundamentalism. Are there any major other social trends that are taking place in Bangladesh that we may not be looking at?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. You see, Bangladesh is known for its nationalism. And it's a very modern sort of nationalism because it's language-based nationalism. That is why the uprising or the protest of 1952, which is now recognized as the the International Mother Tongue Day. So I think what we are witnessing today in Bangladesh is that there is a perceptible shift from language-based nationalism to religion-based identity. And this again is, I mean, I'm not sure whether this is a temporary phenomenon or is it going to linger on for some time. But as of now, for example, some of the important advocates of this particular religious identity-oriented nationalism is one of the biggest editor called Mahmoudur Rahman. Now, Mahmoudur Rahman was based out of Turkey for nearly 5 to 6 years when Sheikh Hasina was in power. And then he returned last year after Hasina left the country, and he launched this newspaper called Amad Desh, means my country. And he just made this speech, I think yesterday or day before, where he said that if I can't say Allahu Akbar in my country, then what sort of a Bengali Musalman am I? And then his whole argument was that this whole emphasis about Bengali culture, or he used a particular term, that Sanskriti. Bengali Sanskriti is basically a kind of tactic to appropriate the identity of Bangladeshis. So there are multiple issues here in this debate, because on the one hand, Bangladesh Nationalist Party believes in Bangladeshi nationalism, not just in Bengali nationalism. On the other hand, the people like Mahmoudur Rahman and others are saying that we are Bengali Musalman first, and our Musalman identity have to be recognized first. Only then we will talk about the rest of the issues, be it language, be it region, and be it economic future, etc. So when you say that the religion and the way Bangladesh is shaping up, I think it's basically that the whole spectrum of nationalism in Bangladesh is being subjected to some sort of an experiment, where its original premise, original tenets like language, its own particular very specific sort of history, where Bangladesh was seen as stemming out of the rebellion of the 18th and the 19th century Bengali Musalman against the British colonial rulers. Those foundational ideas and historical facts are also being thrown into the air, and they are looking at more global inspirations. For example, how it is to be a Muslim in the 21st century, and what are the factors that are governing that experiment, how to be a Muslim in the 21st century. Today, you have someone like the Mamdani coming in New York And again, there are these very young boys and girls who have overthrown a very established government in Dhaka in 2024. So I think again it's a pendulum kind of a thing. I mean, it's not yet settled, but it's interesting to observe this experiment that Bangladesh is doing. Just that one hopes that it will lead to more stability and some sort of a reconciliation within the society, and less fissures.
If you have to sum up the election process that is taking place, do you think the February 2026 elections constitute a systemic shift in politics of Bangladesh? Or do you think it is a process through which new leaders and new parties are coming to power, or old parties under a new leadership are coming to power, who may bring about change in some time in near future? How do you see this?
Well, the election would have just be an election if it was just an election. But this election is being held along with a referendum.
Mm,
And the issue here is that the outcome of the election, that is the government that will come out of this election, hopefully there will be a government that will come out of an election and not a political stalemate. If that government comes out of that election, then it will have the additional, and not just the additional, it will have the immediate responsibility of implementing the outcome of the referendum. Now, if the referendum is a yes referendum, because everybody is saying that this will be a referendum that will be a yes referendum, if the referendum is yes, then this government will have to implement the results of the referendum. So, whatever the agenda that the government comes up with, when it goes to the, say, a political party, BNP or Jamaat and others are going into election saying, we will bring XYZ changes into the system and we will govern according to these tenets. But all these promises will have to take a back seat immediately because first of all they have to implement the agenda of the national that is the July Charter, because the July Charter's agenda will then have to be implemented. So then what does the July Charter say? The July Charter says some of the principles that will get ratified in that referendum will have to be implemented within a specific time span. So say in the next 100 to 140 days that will unfold after the election, in that period, the government that comes to power will have to implement these issues. So it's again a tricky terrain that the election, everyone wanted an election, but then now having merged that election with this referendum, it's some sort of a fused, it's some sort of a mixed entity that Bangladesh is going to meet on 12th of February. And then you have a lot of political violence that Bangladesh is naturally vulnerable to. And then with the broken down law and order system, now the Election Commission of Bangladesh has sanctioned a particular amount of money for the law and order process, but it is yet to be seen whether this will be sufficient to handle the law and order challenge prior to the election, because one of the biggest party in the country will not participate. That is Awami League. So what happens to the supporters of that party? Will these supporters play the role of silent supporters of BNP, or would they turn into disruptors and law and order challenge in the country? So these are the things that will determine the actual fate of the election. But what actually, for me, I think it's going to be again a very difficult experiment, because along with election you also have the referendum. And along with the election result, you also have the referendum's result. And then the referendum's result takes precedence above the result of the election. So again, uncharted terrain, and I really don't know how Bangladesh is going to deal with so many challenges. I think the interim government was supposed to just hold the election, but they have ensured that they will also have a referendum. So it's a really difficult time ahead for Bangladesh, as nothing looks easy at the moment, Sanjay.
I mean, you're talking about Bangladesh is moving into very uncharted territories. And we have been looking at Bangladesh, many in India have been looking at Bangladesh with an element of concern. We have seen a lot of anti-India sentiment that has been expressed there. What are the roots of this anti-India sentiment? Is it power asymmetry? Is it a cultural similarities where you're trying to show I'm different? Or is it stemming from political personalities? Because there is also an argument that India has been close to Sheikh Hasina. But the people on the Indian side say, look, Sheikh Hasina was in power. We have to deal with people in power. So, how do you explain, how do you evaluate the anti India sentiment in Bangladesh?
Sanjay, the anti-India sentiment is not new in Bangladesh. Even when the liberation war was taking place in 1971, and even when the leaders of the Awami League, that is Tajuddin Ahmed, Khandakar Mushtaq, were
Mm,
living in India, there was disagreement about how much support they should get from India. And there were
mm,
again problems and complaints coming from them. That one section of the Awami League leaders felt that India was giving too little support. One section felt that India was giving right amount of support. So these disputes and discords about India always evoke very strong passion in Bangladesh, and it goes back in time. So there is nothing new about these matters. And what actually stands out is that earlier these opinions used to be filtered through the lens of nationalism. But today, there is an element of religiosity. There is an element of, there is an element of the idea of the self of Bangladesh, which is defined through religious identity. I think that is a new element, and that is something that should concern India also, because as far as having an Islamist identity is not a problem. But if the Islamist identity is mixed with anti-India ideas, then that's a problem.
where do you think the relationship with Muhammad Yunus with India, the dynamic, where do you think it fell off the cliff, so to say, in the sense that in the initial months after the Sheikh Hasina was exiled to India, Indian government continued with its connectivity projects like opening Petropol border area, I mean, customs depot, upgraded customs depot, whether it is electricity, supplies from Nepal to India to Bangladesh. All those things were continued for a few months, but somehow the relationship never worked. Where do you think it went wrong?
Well, to a limited extent, some of these relationships or the connectivity and exchanges that you are referring to are continuing even now as we speak. For example, the supply of electricity, the exchange of expert manpower that are necessary for carrying out certain repairs and certain technical supervision, etc. inside Bangladesh. These are supports that India continues to provide.
Mm,
These things don't come into the news because these are part of the routine grind, and these things are taking place. And nobody will dispute that, and these things don't are not discussed because these are a part of the political issue. The main problem was that connectivity, transport, exchange of, say, the people-to-people exchange, the visa, etc. These things are a reflection of the political relationship. And every ruler who comes to power in the region, in a way, subconsciously expects that he or she would be recognized by the most powerful state in South Asia, that is New Delhi, the capital of India. And be it the new Prime Minister of Nepal or the generals of Myanmar, there is a tendency to be acknowledged by New Delhi. But you have seen that in the last few months, New Delhi's statements have repeatedly referred to the people of Bangladesh. It has not referred to the interim government of Bangladesh. And the meeting that took place between Prime Minister Modi and Mohammad Yunus in Bangkok is now ancient history. And because India has not hosted Chief Advisor Yunus, because the primary problem from Bangladesh's side, again a political problem, is that Sheikh Hasina continues to be based out of India. And not just Sheikh Hasina, but even many of our senior colleagues, be it the former Home Minister who has received a death sentence, including her. It's being said that her private physician is also based out of India. So these factors also have a political cost for the interim government, and it also could not take chances and travel to New Delhi to meet the Indian leadership. So I think the lack of recognition from India was a setback for Professor Yunus's interim government. It has received recognition from China. It has not been hosted by White House, but it has been hosted by multiple former American presidents. Bill Clinton has met. I think Joe Biden also met Professor Yunus on the sidelines of the United Nations when he was the president of United States. So those things indicate that other world capitals have agreed to interact and engage Professor Yunus, but India has not engaged Professor Yunus because it's number one, it's embarrassing for India because Sheikh Hasina is still in India. So how do we reconcile these two opposing strands? I think that brainstorming was not possible to take place in the short period of time over the last 15, 16 months. And so, therefore, this relation was doomed as far as its political quotient was concerned. Having said that, I think India has again shown its support, extended its support to the people of Bangladesh at the upcoming election, and that was in full display with External Affairs Minister Mr. Jaishankar's visit to Dhaka, where he met he met the leader of Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the foreign affairs advisor of the interim government, Tawhid Hussain. But Mr. Jaishankar did not seek an appointment and obviously did not meet Professor Yunus. But the other guests, including the Speaker of the Pakistan National Assembly, the Nepali the foreign minister, they all met the professor, the chief advisor, Professor Yunus. But Mr. Jaishankar actually returned to Delhi immediately after completing those engagements. That is, extending condolence message to Tariq Rahman and meeting other leaders in the parliament premises, without really meeting Professor Yunus. So it gives you a clear indication where India's sentiments are at the moment as far as the interim government is concerned. That they will engage them only till the time it doesn't recognize the leadership of the interim government, because recognizing the leadership would mean something really significant from the Indians, and I don't think India is considering extending that
Mhm.
to the Indian government.
Do you think India's foreign minister S. Jaishankar meeting Tariq Rahman, who's leading the BNP, will have a positive outcome in the coming months between India and Bangladesh? The bilateral relationship may improve. Do you think so?
Well, yes, I mean, in the sense that India has supported the people of Bangladesh. Whatever the choice the people of Bangladesh make, and it is from the India's assessment that it appears that the people of Bangladesh will choose someone like Tariq Rahman to govern the future of the Bangladesh state. So it appears that the people's choice will be supported by the state of India. That is the message that India has conveyed. Of course, whether Tariq Rahman will become Hasina second edition, I don't think that is possible because a lot of water has already flown in the rivers of Bangladesh, and the past will not come back. And even the next government that will engage India will be a new challenge for India. It is not going to be the same in any sense because the next government of Bangladesh, be it under Tariq Rahman or be it under a coalition led by Tariq Rahman and some other forces, will be a very, very tough regional partner for India. So I think it's best that India sides with the people of Bangladesh so that at least it can talk about what is in the best interest of the people of Bangladesh. Because the times have changed for Bangladesh completely with the departure of Sheikh Hasina.
Last question. How optimistic are you of Bangladesh politics in the run-up to the elections and after the elections? Because in the initial part of this conversation, you said there is a daily instability. Do you think it will be addressed after the election uh, with the coming of a new political party?
You see, some of the instability is the making of the interim government and the making of the uprising also, because you cannot have stability in the country by alienating your bureaucracy. Now,
Mm.
in comparison, when you look at the statements that Tariq Rahman has made after returning home on 25th of December, his first statement that he made in the speech on that road called 300 feet road, because it's called 300 feet road because it's a 300 feet wide, broad road made during Hasina's time. What he said was that he expressed his gratitude towards the people who ensure law and order in the country. He expressed his gratitude to the police, to the military. And then again, after the funeral of Khaleda Zia, in a very long social media post, Tariq Rahman said that he acknowledged the support and the great work done by Bangladesh police, Bangladesh paramilitary like Ansar, then the Rapid Action Battalion, and many other, also BGB, the Bangladesh Border Guards. Now, this actually shows you how an experienced person should be conducting his affairs, because the Bangladesh police has been condemned for the last 15, 16 months by the interim government. But in comparison to the interim government's rhetoric, look at the rhetoric of Tariq Rahman. Tariq Rahman is saying, thank you, Bangladesh police, thank you, Bangladesh military, and acknowledging their contribution in ensuring law and order in the country. Now, if you go back in time, not just the interim government's leader, Professor Yunus, but even people like some of the Asif Nazrul, the law and order advisor, who is also the sports advisor of currently the sports advisor of Bangladesh interim government. All of them have been talking about accomplices of fascism inside the administration of Bangladesh. The allies of fascism inside the administration of Bangladesh. Now, when a government setup, whatever, some sort of a political setup threatens the administration in this way on a day-to-day basis, it becomes very difficult for the administration to function. And that is what has happened in Bangladesh, that the law and order instability is not because the police doesn't exist. The law and order instability is because the police has a blemished past because of its involvement in the mass killings of July, August 2024. But having passed through that phase, there was a necessity to get the cleaner version of the police out and make them responsible for the stable conduct of law and order machinery on a day-to-day basis after Hasina fled the country. But that hasn't happened. Instead, what is happening is that daily intimidation, daily harassment of the law and order machinery has taken place, especially because most of the country is now run by social media influencers slash student leaders. These people cannot ensure governance because these are young men or young boys rather, and then they can call on their social media platform that let's go to XYZ destination in the next 2 hours. And there will be 2,000 people coming there and converging and raising slogans. They will create a traffic blockade. But that is not governance. Governance is done by established law and order mechanism. The reason that Bangladesh is witnessing such daily instability is because the law and order machinery is not being allowed to function in harmony with the political leadership. Now, this political leadership right now is in the hands of the interim government. If after the election, the interim government paves way for an elected government in a smooth manner, and then if someone like Tariq Rahman, gives a healing touch to the administrative machinery, saying that whatever mistakes have been committed in the past will be consigned to the past, and now they will start afresh, that will that will push the restart button for the law and order machinery. Because right now, what much of it is actually the making of them of their own. Professor Yunus was supposed to give that healing touch because he is the Nobel Peace Prize winner. But that has not happened, because power has its own dynamic and daily uprisings and daily instability. And this is, I know, at the level of politics is one thing, but at the level of the poor people, the impoverished people, the working class people, um, it's actually felt in a more immediate manner. When, for example, I think last week there was this incident of a factory that was burned down. I think 16 laborers perished in that incident. And prior to that, there was, I think, in the month of October, the cargo terminal of Dhaka Airport, International Airport, got entirely burned down. The reason given was that the fire service could not reach the airport on time. Obviously, there are some fire tenders inside the airport, but that was insufficient because the fire was so big. So, if these basic services are not functioning properly, then how do you think law and order will function for the common people? I think the real price of this breakdown is being borne by the poorest of the poor in Bangladesh, the working class people. And one just hopes that the election leads to some sort of a healing of the ties between the political leadership and the law and order, the administration, and the bureaucracy, who are silent, who are quiet right now, because they are being blamed from much of the violence that has taken place during Hasina's time. But most of them were not involved. Many of them were not involved. So why to blame the entire bureaucratic machinery for being involved with quote unquote fascism and fascist elements, etc. I think that's also an overzealous revolutionary attitude that will have to be reined in after the election.
Thank you. Let's hope that Bangladesh will find a statesman who will give it a healing touch and restart the economic process, the vibrancy of Bangladesh economy. Thank you, Kallol, for a wonderful conversation, genuinely wonderful conversation, a comprehensive analysis of what is happening in Bangladesh, its politics, its economy, its society. Thank you once again, and hopefully we will reconnect very soon to discuss what is happening in Bangladesh after the elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be with you. Thank you, and all the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you.